A month ago, I went to Japan, Osaka specifically, and the neighboring cities of Nara, Kobe, and Kyoto. And it was such a surreal experience. The sights, the patterns, the colors, the architecture, the food, and I wanted to share how I made a travel film slash visual journal about my trip. I'll be talking about the gear I used, my experience filming there, and some tips and takeaways on shooting and editing a travel film from my point of view. Let's get into it. I had my Sony FX3, which I recently got. I brought two lenses, the Sony 24-70 GM Mark II for full frame, and the Sigma 16mm f1.4 for APS-C. Two tripods, a Zhiyun Weebill 2 gimbal, a Rode Video Mic Pro, a set of newer neutral density filters, my Moment Cinebloom 10% filter, and of course, a bunch of batteries, a charger, a CF Express card, and my camera strap. I originally brought the 16mm for its low-light capabilities, but I realized I could just bump up the ISO on the FX3 and still get great low-light footage from my Sony lens. So I only used a Sigma on day one. The trip also entailed a lot of walking around, and I wanted to carry only the essentials as much as possible. That meant leaving the bigger tripod and my Rode mic behind in our hotel, both of which I never got to use for the entire trip. Finally, I only used my Cinebloom filter for the first few nights and decided that I wanted a cleaner image for my night shots instead. So in reality, this is the gear I ended up using. So this was definitely a learning experience for me to basically plan ahead with the amount of gear to bring and to focus on the essentials. Because this was still primarily a vacation, and I had to factor the weight of all my gear when checking into the airport and when moving around on the daily. I made a few travel films before, but this time around I really wanted to focus on composition, framing, and motion. With motion, I wanted to take into account the objects or people on the frame or the camera movement itself, because it really does help push the visuals and tell the story. And before the trip, I did plan some shots and conceptualize how I would edit them together just to have that bit of a structure when I was shooting, something that I could always go back to when I wasn't sure what to film. This included food shots, time lapses, exterior shots, moving through the city, and so on. At the same time, I made sure to open myself up to new ideas and just let my creativity go where it wanted to go. And one sequence in particular ended up being my favorite, the vending machine transition, which I thought of when I was climbing in one of the bouldering gyms in Osaka. I was really thirsty from climbing, and I thought that it would be neat to capture a moment where I was at one place, but then transported into a completely different world through the power of a vending machine. A machine that is literally everywhere in Japan. So what I liked about the FX3, and take note, I've just been using this camera for a little over a month, so these are just my preliminary impressions. But right off the bat, I really like the ability to load in LUTs or lookup tables or color filters into the camera. My previous camera, the A7 III, didn't have this feature, and since I would usually shoot with a flat picture profile and add the colors in post, the image on the screen just didn't spark any visual joy. That's not the case here, because I could download the LUTs I want to try, pick one out during the day, and I could see how the images could possibly look during the edit, which really pushed me to film more. Secondly, I love the compact setup. I mentioned earlier how much walking we did, and having a setup I could break down into the bare essentials was really helpful on my back and shoulders, because we were carrying my big ass bag around everywhere we went, even all the way up the summit of the Fushimi Inari Shrine, a nearly 3-hour hike. Finally, with the camera being very video-centric, it is a cinema camera after all, it just made filming a breeze, especially with all the buttons for those settings I need to frequently change. Now for what I didn't like, and I might be biased because I watched a ton of YouTube review videos on the Sony FX3 before I actually got it, but I would have liked to have a brighter monitor in the back, especially when shooting during the day, because sometimes it can be hard to check your exposure. For context, this is my old Sony a6000. I've had this for a while but haven't used it, but it has an electronic viewfinder or an EVF, allowing you to check your image with a little bit more accuracy during the day. But I would say that this wasn't really a big deal breaker for me, not having an EVF. I kind of miss it though. Editing took me around 2 weeks because when we got back, I kinda wasn't feeling the first few drafts of the project. When editing, I would get into a nice flow and then suddenly hit a brick wall and stop working. So I kept retrying and retrying the style until I put together this sequence of finding a quiet spot, focusing on those little moments, and it just clicked. I wanted this edit to be something that I could go back to and just relive the experience all over again. I wanted the visuals to not only show the kinetic energy of Japan, but also show the slow and peaceful moments. And this edit just made sense. Of course, I made sure to focus on sound design as well, because I always feel that it brings the edit to the next level.
Stop at Tamatsuri, N19.
So to sum it all up, plan ahead, but it's okay to not stick to the plan. Bring the gear that you need, but try not to bring too much because I actually find that having limitations in your gear can help you be more creative with your work. Play around with your edit even if you feel stuck, and most of the time you will feel stuck, but just keep going and you'll eventually find that moment where everything will click and you won't be able to stop editing. Finally, just have fun and enjoy the experience. Point and shoot as much as you can, a little point and shoot pun there, but remember to enjoy being where you are. For me, Japan has been on my bucket list for the longest time, and I really wanted to be present and be in the moment as much as I could. So yeah, if you were able to send all of my ramblings and reach the end of this video, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Before you go, comment below where your next travel destination might be, or if you plan to shoot or edit your own travel film or visual journal in the future. I hope that this little video of mine can give you some ideas and inspiration. Thank you very much, and yeah, see you again soon. Bye!